Imagine a strong, healthy horse who suddenly refuses to leave the barn. Day after day, he remains motionless, as if harboring a dark secret. The desperate owners called experts, but no one could explain the animal's strange behavior, until a simple flash of courage led them to investigate what was hidden inside. What they found left the entire town in shock, a discovery so unbelievable that it forever transformed the family's lives and brought to light a long-buried mystery. Get ready for a story that will captivate you from start to finish and reveal a secret that no one could ever imagine. In the vast golden fields of the American countryside, there was a farm that seemed untouched by time. The Turner estate was known for its rustic beauty and tranquility, but what really made it stand out was Billy, a majestic thoroughbred horse. Strong, fast, and imposing, Billy was the pride of the family and the soul of the farm. He ran freely through the fields, radiating life and energy, as if nothing could stop him. However, something has changed. Suddenly, Billy refused to leave the barn. He would simply stop at the door, neigh softly, and back away. At first, the Turners thought it was a passing whim, perhaps caused by some unknown noise or smell. But as the days went by, the situation only got worse. Billy, once fearless, now cowered in the darkest corner of the barn, as if he were running away from something invisible. Concerned, the Turners began to observe the horse's behavior more closely. He ate less, was restless, and often cast apprehensive glances at a specific spot in the barn. It was as if he was trying to warn something, but couldn't express it in words. The change was so drastic that it began to affect the family's mood. Billy wasn't just a pet. He was part of their story. The tension increased every day. The Turners knew they needed to act before it was too late. They were faced with an inexplicable mystery, one that would transform their lives and reveal long-buried secrets. The Turners couldn't ignore what was happening to Billy. Every attempt to get him out of the barn was met with resistance. He balked, dug his hooves into the ground, and neighed nervously, as if something invisible was keeping him trapped there. Worry turned to despair when Billy began to lose weight and show signs of stress. What was once a vibrant horse now seemed like an animal haunted by something no one could see. In an attempt to find answers, the family called a local veterinarian. After a thorough examination, the diagnosis was inconclusive. Billy was physically healthy, with no apparent injuries or illnesses. Then they brought in an animal behaviorist, who suggested that perhaps the horse was reacting to a recent trauma or to some high-pitched sound that humans couldn't perceive. But even after trying to disable electrical systems and testing different methods, nothing changed. Billy remained restless and disturbed. As the days turned into weeks, the barn, once just a shelter for the animals, came to be seen as a gloomy place. The Turners avoided spending much time inside, feeling a heavy and oppressive atmosphere. They began to notice that Billy always looked in the same dark corner, as if something was buried there or hidden in the shadows. The family even considered selling the property or forcibly removing Billy, but something was stopping them. It was as if the horse was trying to protect them from an invisible danger. The connection between them and Billy was too deep to ignore, and the feeling that something bigger was at play only grew. The mystery grew, fueled by the fear of the unknown. The Turners knew they needed to act, but what would they find if they really investigated? Was it just a coincidence, an irrational fear of the animal? Or was there something more, something no one was prepared to face? With these questions pounding in their minds, they made a bold decision. They would dig deep, literally, and discover what was hidden in that barn. Night was falling over the Turner farm, but inside the barn, the darkness seemed thicker. Each sound echoed like an unsettling whisper. Billy was still standing in the same corner, his eyes fixed on a specific point on the floor. It was as if he was waiting for someone to finally pay attention to what he already knew. The Turners began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. The barn floor, covered with hay and packed earth, had a slight depression right where Billy used to look. Furthermore, the smell of the room seemed different. It wasn't the typical aroma of wood and straw, but something heavier, almost metallic. Although they tried to ignore the growing discomfort, something inside them, perhaps instinct or even desperation, prompted them to investigate. The father of the family, John Turner, grabbed a flashlight and began searching the barn for clues. Moving boards and dragging old objects, he soon realized that the focus was on that corner where Billy was staring. The mother, Sarah, felt a chill as she passed by the scene. "Do you notice how the air here feels different?" he asked, and John just nodded, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. It was as if the atmosphere around that area was charged with something invisible, but palpable. Billy began to neigh more sharply and insistently. He scraped his hooves on the ground, as if he wanted to dig, but didn't have the courage to move forward. It was at that moment that the Turners understood that this wasn't just strange behavior. Billy was trying to protect them, or perhaps warn them of a danger they didn't yet understand. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, they decided to act. With shovels and flashlights in hand, they began to dig at the exact point where Billy was looking. The sound of metal scraping against the earth echoed in the silence of the barn, each movement heightening the anticipation of what would be revealed. They knew they were about to uncover something big, but nothing could prepare them for what was about to emerge from that darkness. The silence inside the barn was almost deafening. The sound of shovels cutting into the earth resounded like drum beats, each blow filled with expectation and tension. Billy remained motionless, watching every movement, as if he knew that this moment would mark the beginning of an inevitable revelation. John dug hard, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. Sarah held the flashlight, illuminating the hole that was beginning to form in the ground. Each layer of dirt removed revealed more than dust. It revealed the weight of a secret buried far too long. As they descended deeper, they found pieces of rotten wood and rusty nails, as if some kind of structure had been buried there. It was then that the shovel hit something solid. A hollow sound echoed through the barn, making Sarah and John look at each other. They both knew they had found what Billy was trying to show. With shaking hands, John carefully brushed away the dirt until he revealed the outlines of an ancient box covered in rust and dirt. It was large enough to make it clear that it held something important, or disturbing. Sarah held John's arm. "Are you sure we should open this?" His voice was a whisper, but it carried the gravity of the moment. John took a deep breath. "If Billy brought us here, we need to find out why." With a crowbar, John pried open the rusty lid. The creaking of metal echoed, cutting through the thick air of the barn. When the lid finally opened, the dim glow of the flashlight revealed the contents. Inside the box, there were old objects, faded photographs, aged papers, and a small package wrapped in fabric. But it was what was beneath the fabric that made their hearts race. When they unfolded it, they found a metallic object, massive and engraved with strange symbols. It seemed like something sacred, or perhaps cursed. Sarah instinctively backed away, while Billy neighed, pulling on the chains as if he wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. The mystery had deepened. Not only had they found a buried secret, but something that seemed to carry a dark, inexplicable weight. The question now was not just what that object was, but what it meant to the history of that farm, and to Billy himself. John and Sarah could barely breathe as they stared at the metallic object in their hands. Heavy, cold to the touch, and covered in engraved symbols that seemed as old as time, it gave off a strange feeling, as if it carried an invisible weight. It was impossible to determine whether this was a religious artifact, a forgotten relic, or something even more mysterious. Billy, outside the hole, neighed agitatedly, pulling at his chains and scraping his hooves against the ground. The horse's behavior seemed more intense by the second, as if the open box had released something he felt but the humans couldn't see. Sarah, startled, took a step back. "We have to call someone." "That doesn't seem right, John." John, however, was fascinated. Rummaging through the rest of the box, he found old photographs and handwritten letters. Some of the letters mentioned the name of a woman named Eleanor, someone who had apparently lived on that farm decades before. The papers spoke of family disputes, broken promises, and a tragedy that was never resolved. Among the yellowed pages were also newspaper clippings, describing Eleanor's mysterious disappearance and the abrupt closure of the old estate. The most disturbing thing was a handwritten note, folded and hidden under the fabric that covered the metallic object. "Never dig it up. Protect the earth. Protect yourselves." The words resonated in John's mind, bringing an inevitable chill. Whatever was buried there, someone in the past did everything they could to keep it hidden. But why? Was it just superstition? Or was there something darker at play? As they tried to absorb the meaning of the discovery, Billy began to act even more desperate, forcing himself against the chains until, with a violent tug, he managed to free himself. The horse bolted out of the barn, as if running away from something the Turners couldn't yet see. The tension was growing, but John and Sarah knew they couldn't ignore what they had found. They decided to take the papers and the object to the house, hoping to investigate more about the property's past. However, as they left the barn, they both felt something strange, an invisible presence that seemed to be watching them. The mystery, far from being solved, was just beginning to reveal its deepest layers. Night fell over the Turner farm, but sleep seemed impossible. John and Sarah sat at the kitchen table, spreading out the yellowed papers and old photographs. Each document seemed to add a new piece to the dark puzzle they were trying to piece together. The letters revealed disturbing details about Eleanor, the former owner of the property. She had inherited the farm after the mysterious death of her parents. Records suggested that Eleanor was seen as a lonely and superstitious woman. Neighbors described her obsession with protecting the property from something she said was buried there. Old accounts mentioned that she performed strange rituals in the barn, always around the same corner where Billy now refused to leave. Newspaper clippings found in the box revealed that Eleanor disappeared without a trace. Most disturbing, however, was the date of his disappearance. Exactly 50 years to the night Billy began acting strangely. Coincidence? Or was there something more? Intrigued, John searched city records for information. With the help of a local historian, he discovered that the property had been investigated in the past. Some residents believed that Eleanor had sealed something inside that barn, something that should never be disturbed. Others talked about ancient curses and the symbol engraved on the metal object found. The symbol, according to the historian, was associated with protection and sealing rituals. He explained that such objects were often used to imprison or ward off evil forces. By removing it from the ground, the Turners could have broken a seal and released something that had been there for decades. Sarah, now visibly scared, wanted to return the object to the hole and seal it again, but John hesitated. He felt there were more answers to be found, answers that might explain not only the mystery of the barn, but also Billy's behavior. As they pondered their next move, a noise echoed outside. It was Billy, neighing desperately and running in circles across the field. Something was wrong, and this time, it seemed like the entire farm felt it. The sky over the Turner farm seemed darker that night. The wind cut through the fields, making the trees rustle as if they were trying to warn of something. In the center of it all, Billy ran desperately, neighing and casting nervous glances toward the barn. John and Sarah ran to try and calm him down, but the horse was as agitated as ever. John knew they could no longer delay a decision. Picking up the metallic object, he and Sarah returned to the barn, driven by a mixture of fear and urgency. With each step, they felt the weight of that night grow. When they reached the excavated hole, Sarah stopped abruptly. "If we put this back, will it be enough?" he asked, his voice shaking. John hesitated for a moment, but when he saw Billy standing outside, watching them as if awaiting relief, he knew what needed to be done. Carefully, he lowered the metal object back into the hole. Sarah quickly covered everything with earth, sealing the space as if they were burying not just an object, but also the fear and mystery it carried. Silence took over the barn. Billy, who until then had been restless, stopped neighing and lowered his head, finally calm. It was as if something invisible had been broken, or perhaps restored. In the days that followed, Billy returned to his normal behavior. He left the barn without resistance, ran freely across the field, and ate as before. John and Sarah, on the other hand, carried the emotional scars of what they had experienced. They decided to keep the documents and letters stored, but the metallic object remained buried, sealed forever. The experience left them with a new understanding about the invisible bonds that connect animals, people, and places. To the Turners, Billy wasn't just a horse. He was the silent keeper of a secret that should never have been revealed. The story of Billy and the barn. Mystery is not just an intriguing account of buried secrets. It is a powerful reminder of the importance of trusting the signs around us, signs that often come in unexpected ways. Billy couldn't speak, but his behavior was a silent cry for attention, a warning that saved his family from living under the shadow of a dark secret. The Turners learned the hard way that ignoring instincts can be costly. Whether through a horse or an inexplicable sensation, life always offers us clues. It's up to us to decide whether we're going to pay attention or move on, ignoring what we can't see. In the Turners' case, listening to Billy's instinct and facing the unknown led not only to answers, but also to a renewal of faith and courage. While Billy returned to running through the fields, free from fear, the Turner family never looked at the barn the same way again. They understood that some stories do not need to be completely explained to leave profound lessons. And sometimes the greatest mysteries are solved not with logic, but with sensitivity and faith. If this story made you reflect, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the importance of trusting their own instincts. Leave your comment below telling us what you thought of this journey and what you would do in the Turner family's place. And remember, mysteries exist to challenge and teach us. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, because as we saw today, the unknown isn't always the end. Often, it's just the beginning.